Ever watched a man transform completely after years of solitude? Not angrier, not harder, just unreachable? Tonight, discover what genuinely unfolds within his soul during extended periods alone, and why it permanently alters his capacity to connect. Because before this video ends, you'll understand why certain men abruptly abandon pursuit, reject vulnerability, and dismiss permanence, even when destiny introduces them to someone extraordinary. What I'm revealing tonight might perfectly describe someone you know. Isolation doesn't necessarily weaken a man. Sometimes it renders him voiceless. Sometimes it trains him to exist independently, so effectively that he forgets needing another person is even possible. That's where our journey truly starts. Nobody discusses what transpires inside a man who spends years neither loving nor receiving love. Initially, he convinces himself everything's acceptable. He embraces the independence, the stillness, the authority over his existence. He masters solitary meals, solitary sleep, solitary laughter, solitary tears. He quits anticipating texts, stops expecting phone calls, abandons hope that anyone will question, "How are you holding up?" Gradually, his emotional core adapts to separation. Through this acceptance, he develops emotional self-sufficiency, powerful, balanced, yet simultaneously protected. Why? Because surviving isolation extensively teaches you something dangerous, that romantic connection is expendable, that emotional bonds represent threats, that relying on another person equals catastrophic error. And when someone eventually appears in his world, they don't encounter a lonely individual. They meet someone who's mastered existence without companionship. That transformation changes absolutely everything. 1. He discovers complete self-reliance. When a man remains unpartnered for extended periods, his primary revelation is straightforward. If rescue isn't arriving, I'll rescue myself. Consequently, he transforms into his personal support network, his personal encouragement, his personal consolation. During exhaustion, he self-motivates. During pain, he remains quiet. During confusion, he independently navigates solutions. 0 shoulders available for leaning. 0 midnight conversations. 0 "I've got your back" reassurances. Simply him. Initially, this creates remarkable strength. He cultivates discipline, concentration, autonomy. He eliminates needing approval, stops pursuing recognition, stops demonstrating value. But internally, something fundamental shifts. He begins internalizing beliefs. Depending on others involves risk. Revealing yourself invites danger. Forming attachments demonstrates weakness. So he secures portions of his identity away, not from coldness, but from excessive solitary time. And when someone finally approaches closely, he doesn't understand how to lean. He doesn't understand requesting assistance. He doesn't understand articulating, "You're necessary to me." He's mastered surviving without affection, unlearning that survival mechanism creates agony. 2. He transforms into an emotionally careful, trust-resistant person. When a man experiences prolonged singleness, he doesn't abandon believing in romance. He abandons believing in guarantees. He's witnessed relationships crumble. He's observed people transform. He's felt optimism vanish silently. Therefore, rather than trusting readily, he develops observation skills. He listens beyond speaking. He monitors behaviors beyond language. He analyzes behavioral sequences instead of emotional displays, not from manipulation, but from self-preservation. Each occasion he considered, perhaps this attempt succeeds. Something malfunctioned. Someone departed. Someone evolved. Someone selected differently. Currently, before surrendering his heart, he poses countless unspoken inquiries. Will you remain? Will you vanish? Will you damage me like previous partners? Will trusting you become regrettable? Because he receives no definitive responses, he advances cautiously, extremely cautiously. He doesn't accelerate toward commitment. He doesn't reveal himself rapidly. He doesn't develop feelings easily. To you, this resembles indecision, resembles uncertainty, resembles emotional remoteness. But internally, he's battling conflict, a conflict between I desire loving again and I refuse experiencing heartbreak again. Psychologists identify this as emotional fortification, defenses constructed following repeated letdowns. He isn't frigid, he's vigilant. He isn't disinterested, he's terrified of surrendering himself once more. 3. How isolation reconstructs his thinking. Have you observed how men absent from relationships for years begin thinking distinctly, not merely regarding women, but regarding existence itself? His consciousness becomes a war zone of anxiety, aspiration, and skepticism. Extended periods without intimacy cause him to overanalyze everything. Every text message, every expression, every minor exchange. Minor gestures transform into riddles he desperately attempts solving, yet frequently can't. Isolation doesn't simply generate connection cravings. It fundamentally rewires his neural pathways to anticipate disappointment. He becomes careful, nearly defensive, frightened of proximity because he's mentally rehearsed heartbreaks repeatedly until they seem unavoidable. Here's the contradiction. Extended isolation causes him to superimpose previous failures onto every fresh opportunity, generating self-perpetuating prophecies. But everything isn't pessimistic. This separation, when comprehended correctly, can become concealed power. He starts recognizing personal patterns, discovering what genuinely matters, what compromises he'll accept, and what boundaries he'll never violate again. His emotional perception intensifies. He experiences emotions more profoundly, strategizes more deliberately, and develops greater self-understanding. Nevertheless, internal tension never completely evaporates. One aspect craves connection, but another fears vulnerability. That fear, without management, traps him within isolation cycles, even when possibilities emerge. The harsh reality: isolation transforms him in invisible ways, but simultaneously prepares him for something remarkable if he accepts it. 4. The transformation in his approach toward romance. Extended singleness fundamentally alters how a man pursues love, sometimes unconsciously. He no longer rushes, no longer succumbs to every temporary attraction. Instead, he becomes discriminating, nearly clinical in emotional decisions. He's understood that not every smile merits his faith. Not every compliment warrants optimism. This isn't heartlessness. It's knowledge earned through experience, shaped by years of yearning and contemplation. Yet, this evolution contains dual edges. One side, he's more conscious of genuine desires, what generates happiness, and aligns with core values. He identifies superficial interactions instantly, and he no longer wastes energy on fleeting fantasies. Opposite side, this selectiveness can become imprisonment. He examines potential partners so intensely that even authentic possibilities seem insufficient. Fear and elevated standards merge in delicate, sometimes constricting equilibrium. Here's the contradiction. Extended isolation strengthens him emotionally, but simultaneously creates vulnerability in hidden dimensions. Every previous wound leaves invisible scarring. Every disappointment adds protective layering that shields from suffering, but simultaneously obstructs love. That tension between development and fear, between hope and doubt, that's where most men silently struggle. But truthfully, this struggle prepares him. The emotional consciousness, the patience, the meticulous judgment, they establish foundations for deeper, more significant connections when appropriate persons finally materialize. He's no longer simply seeking relationships. He's anticipating someone who harmonizes with his evolved self. This is where most observers fail recognizing the magic. Isolation isn't merely absence. its metamorphosis, quietly molding him into someone prepared for romance on completely elevated levels. The 5. The concealed strength of solitary existence. Here's the secret rarely acknowledged. Extended singleness amplifies a man's potential, not just understanding others, but understanding himself. Every isolation moment, every night spent questioning, doubting, and reflecting, it resembles spiritual weightlifting. It constructs resilience, patience, and emotional complexity that partnered men rarely develop. He learns embracing discomfort without panic, tolerating quietness without seeking distraction, and discovering purpose in personal company. He identifies what genuinely matters, values purpose, passion, and recognizes that romance isn't void-filling, but completeness sharing with someone who resonates with it. Here's the overlooked paradox. This painful solitary period grants relationship advantages. When he finally encounters someone worthy, he doesn't cling, plead, or compromise. He connects from abundance, not desperation. He can love completely, freely, and intelligently because he's learned navigating his personal emotions first. This represents waiting's power, loneliness's hidden strength. It's not about unfortunate circumstances or undesirability. It's about becoming rare, someone who doesn't merely fall into romance, but consciously steps into it, prepared for something exceptional. Therefore, if you're viewing this experiencing solitary wait, don't lose hope. That duration is molding you, refining you, preparing you to enter relationships on levels most people only fantasize about. Your isolation isn't cursed, it's your hidden advantage. Extended singleness never feels easy. It can feel burdensome, separating, even unjust. But truthfully, every silent evening, every longing moment, and every heartbreak has quietly shaped you into someone stronger, wiser, and more prepared than ever for genuine romance. You're not missing opportunities. You're developing, refining, and becoming a man who will attract not just anyone, but the correct person. So if you've been single extensively,